Hi everyone, my name is Abigail and on behalf of the organisers, Oliver Kinross, I'd like to welcome you all to the second session of the day at the online New York Festival of Construction. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of our sponsors, but with very special mention of AMC Bridge, our sponsors of today's session. Today's session will be looking at bringing new technology to the construction workflow in a discussion moderated by Mark Driscoll, Senior Director of Enterprise Sales at AMC Bridge. There'll be plenty of time for Q&A throughout the session, so do take the opportunity to submit any questions you have in the Q&A box on your screen. I hope you all enjoyed today's discussion, and over to you now, Mark.
Thank you, Abby. It's a pleasure to be here today, and want to say hello and welcome to all of our panelists. If you guys could go ahead and turn your cameras and microphones on. As Abigail mentioned, we're going to discuss the challenges and processes of bringing new technologies into the construction workflow. I'm Mark Driscoll. I'm the Senior Director of Enterprise Sales for AMC Bridge, a firm that develops custom software solutions and integrations for companies in construction, architecture, and manufacturing. With me today are Jim Quanci, Director of AD&M Partnerships at Autodesk, Bill Epifano from OpenSpace, he's Enterprise Account Executive there. Joseph Krauer, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Robotic Eyes out of Munich. Rick Dunlap, the Vice President of Technical Services at BrandSafway, and Mike Cox, the BIM Strategist for Allegion. So the concept of building information modeling, or BIM, has been around for many, many years, more than we all care to count, right? But around the globe, we've seen varying degrees of success in BIM adoption. And in many cases, we've seen a delay in companies realizing the full potential ROI that BIM can provide. Part of the challenge in realizing that ROI may be related to the huge number of available technologies and technology choices, and the challenges of integrating those and leveraging that technology in the workflow. Over the past several years, we've just seen a massive explosion in the types of technologies, whether it's hardware or software, that's available to the construction marketplace today. And the process of integrating those technology solutions into those workflows only increases the complexity and the challenges of allowing our customers, our clients, to become successful in using those new technologies. So today we're going to discuss those challenges, some best practices for successfully implementing new technologies, and some of the pitfalls to look out for as we do approach those topics. We'll start the discussion with a few questions, and even though I'll direct the questions to certain individuals, I invite you all to share your thoughts whenever you have something you'd like to add to the discussion. I'd like to keep this a fairly informal sharing of ideas and insights. This is a pretty dynamic and expert panel, and so I know that we've got a lot of ideas and insights to share with our listeners today. At the end of the discussion, and if time permits, we'll open up the floor to Q&A from our audience. So with that said, Rick, I'd like to start with you. BrandSafway recently made the decision to develop an augmented reality application for use by your internal customers. What was the motivation behind that choice, and what were some of the critical challenges you had to overcome throughout that decision and implementation process?
Yeah, sure. So sort of as you described, Mark, I think we've been on a journey for about 7 or 8 years now, really understanding what 3D space is and how it can help us. I think one of the things that we've learned over the last 6 or 7, 8 years is that everyone's capable of identifying a really good idea, and everyone's capable of dedicating company resources to go and do this one-off idea. So I'm going to kind of answer your question backwards, right? So what we've been focused on the last couple of years is really trying to bring together our 3D strategy, and so BIM is part of that discussion, right? So how can I talk in 3D if I'm not talking in a common language inside of 3D, quite honestly? that's been one of our biggest hurdles, right? Is how do I get the functional teams, whether it's field operations teams, to be able to interact with 3D models? How do I get our engineering teams to actually create and deliver families of items and products in 3D so that I can then replicate that? Because from my perspective, growing up in the field side of the business, quite honestly, the operational side, with a heavy emphasis in, say, project management, project control, is how do I enable our field teams to be more effective? So what I would tell you is it can be death by 1,000 cuts with all the potential technologies that are out there. And what we want to do is kind of let everyone get their feel of adoption. Everyone get bought into, we're going to go from flat pieces of paper to virtual environments. And you can't do that top down. You can only do that through building consensus, right? So once we've done that, the natural place for us to use 3D, quite honestly, is we're a 30,000 person field operation. There's a lot of field activity that happens. And if you watch the communication processes that are going on out there in the field, sometimes it's on cell phones, sometimes it's on field radios, sometimes it's on pieces of paper, and very complex, tasks are being asked to be performed. So how can I make the biggest impact? Well, biggest impact is have a nice 3D library of objects that's common across all the functions in our business. Have a couple of forums to be able to share those 3D objects and convey plans, safety process, quality process, engineering requirements, all those things. But the AR VR really, the app that you mentioned, really helps us in 3 key ways. I see it as our field teams can actually validate designs or a variety of solutions in the as-built space right there at the scene of the task or the work phase. The other thing is we can help convey some of the information our engineering team. So we have a broad engineering team, R&D engineering, application engineering, product engineering. How do I bring all those people together and show them in a consistent, concise way? That application helps us do that. And then lastly, sort of where most of us started this journey, I would say, is the neat factor of technology. Clients, our teams internally, externally, they all like technology. They all know that's where it needs to go. They're not exactly sure as to why. So we can help share solutions. We can help engage customers, drive their experience, and do a lot of those things. So it's really a 3-for-1, but what really pays for it is making our field teams more efficient.
I think that brings up a great point too, Rick, of the why factor. And I think that really boils down to proper education just for all levels of technology being implemented through construction. Because I think that's where sometimes the reluctance kind of starts, is what am I implementing? Why am I doing this? So proper education, understanding from the client perspective, what am I trying to solve for? And what issues, problems can I start to streamline with the use of technology? So I think that's like, we'll obviously get, I think, deeper into that conversation, but yeah, I think that why factor is very large, and it's unique to each organization that you come across as well. So, not one size fits all.
Yeah, so to tag on, right, to kind of give you a real world example, right? So I had a small engineering team that reported to me, and it was always, let's get 3D, let's get the BIM thing going. No, it takes too long. I can't learn how to do it. It's harder. It's scary. It's the monster under the bed kind of thing. Now, over the last 6 months, you've seen a couple of hundred engineers actually start that conversion. And what we're finding is there's a huge amount of synergy and excitement. And actually, they're starting to recognize that when we get to that environment, it's actually more efficient. They can do more solutions. They can provide multiple alternatives in the same amount of time. It's really nice that the workflow starts to get integrated that way.
It's kind of a sales 101 concept. If the users or buyers understand why they need that and what the benefits are, it becomes a lot easier for them to adopt that. Technology.
So from a personal perspective, right, I'll share that these are 5, 6, 8, 10-year visions of mine, and now people are starting to embrace them. And suddenly, there's a huge stakeholder or group of stakeholders that are now taking that and taking it to levels I never dreamed of, right? And it's kind of happy on one hand, but I'm kind of like, wow, they've taken it, they've taken the baby and now they've moved on, right? So it's exciting, but that's the only way organizations can actually prosper and continue to grow. So, yeah.
Rick, you bring up an interesting point. We look at this panel. There's without being offensive to anyone, there's a couple of dozen years of experience here, and
yeah,
we've all experienced this push right from our early days with 2D applications and moving from drafting to the computer, which seems like a lifetime ago. And certainly with the advent of 3D models, companies have just really driven in that direction. Do you still see a lot of the reticence of moving from 2D to 3D at this stage in the game?
If that's for me, the answer is yes, there's still pockets, but we're starting at the foundational elements of those people, right? So we're making sure that executive leadership understands the value in it. They're not pushing people away from it. The other thing that I would tell you is, in the past, if the client wasn't necessarily asking for it, then why are we doing it? Well, it's differentiation, it's internal efficiency, it's all those things. So now we're actually seeing clients and industry pulling. So we're really hitting it from both angles. But we do have elements of people who've always done it this way for 30 years, and this is the way they're going to do it until they don't do it anymore. But
we'll
that's
bring
okay.
them along kicking and screaming.
Yeah, but that's okay too. But there will be a trend, there will be a conversion over time, right? I mean, a natural evolution of that stuff, right? So they're still valuable people, and they have very good experiential knowledge and solutions that they've had trapped in their brain for 30 years. So how do we get that out and help them teach some of the new generation or some of the 3D generation how to put that in a model?
That's certainly one of the important elements of what we've noticed as a company over the past several years, that unlocking of that domain expertise, that domain knowledge is really an important and valuable element as we move forward with technology adoption.
Yes,
Mike, similarly, Allegion recently launched a new version of your Revit add-in application. What was the motivation behind creating that application, and what challenges did you guys face when you when you implemented that, and by extension, what are the challenges you face getting your customers to adopt that?
Well, Allegion, I work for the Overture, and the Overture brand does for Allegion is we help architects and building facility owners, and we help them design the hardware, right? Allegion is a big name in the hardware industry, door hardware industry. So we help them collaborate within Overture, everything about a door, what goes on the door, anything about the door. So to push that along, it's a natural progression to have an opportunity for a user within Revit to push data to Overture and consequently pull data from Overture back into the model. So that was the premise of the Revit plugin component. It's always a challenge, right? There's the educational challenge that we're still going through right now. Some companies go a little bit probably too far in the model and take a lot of data from the model. We're trying to just help the users simplify what they're sending to us in a coordinated effort back and forth.
So you can collaborate, right? That's what you're trying to do.
Collaboratively, yes. Yep. And we're trying to collect the data for that door, for the life cycle of that door. So yeah, so it's a natural progression for the Revit plugin.
So this is a great example of how BIM and in particular that particular model data for that particular door is so much more than just the image of the the door. There's a lot of information about the hardware, the life cycle, the maintenance, et cetera, that you need your customers to be able to access. Is
What
that
we
fair?
hear, yeah, absolutely. What we hear often is during the specifications, bidding and all that good stuff, that those different processes of construction, door hardware is 2% of the focus probably, and 80% 80% of the headache is what we're hearing. So how do we help streamline that and make it more efficient for users all along the process?
Cool. So that's another tick box for the discussion. So we talk a little bit about the concept of capturing and exposing domain expertise. We talk a little bit about the idea of being able to access and manage data, more than just file data, but actual metadata and important information about the models themselves. I want to shift gears a little bit, and Phil, I want to come to your side of the conversation and talk about OpenSpace a little bit, because you've got a really unique experience here as an account executive at OpenSpace and other companies before, and being in the construction industry on both sides, both as a builder and as a technologist. You've helped a lot of companies, a lot of construction firms adopt new technologies. So based on that experience, what insights can you share regarding best practices?
Sure.
Some of the things that your clients or folks you've worked with have used to make sure that their technology deployments were successful.
Sure. Yeah, so, and we'll definitely touch on some of the points I mentioned before, but I'm fourth generation construction. So half the stuff that I've been selling, if I was trying to sell it to my, grandfather, he'd probably be like, Phil, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I know how to put up a building. I don't need your technology. And I think that's back to the point of understand what your pain points are, where are your daily burdens, where are your processes having issues from start to finish, from pre-con to putting the building up, to close out, to hand over to the client. And with the various technologies, I mean, I started at Turner Construction where, I would have a 200 or 2,000 item list for my punch list, walking through with pen and paper, going through and checking off each single item that was complete, or even helping get some of the items complete myself. And so understanding just all these components of where we had simple pain points, and you look back and just, wow, if I had just thought about that same concept that Procore did, or man, and you see how well it's been rolled out for the past 10 years. And I think we still have a long ways to go. So what I love to do with my clients, whether it was Triax with wearable IoT for safety and risk mitigation, to now with OpenSpace, where what my experience has been is keep it as simple as possible. And I think also back to Mike's point, you want to have benefits of the technology through each stakeholder throughout the project, from the design team to the CM and GC to the owners to every concept that I think we forget about. Like sometimes we get in the silo where the technology is only helping the CM manage a certain part of the project. So that's what I've been, so blessed to be with OpenSpace, because it is helping all stakeholders for giving that remote visibility. It's essentially giving you the Google Street View of your job site, not only to help you manage the progress and monitor the progress of the job site, but then to be able to hand over to the client as an operations and facility management tool. So there's a complete handoff that I think is incredibly important. But again, discover what your pain points are with your current processes. Understand, is this an actual need? And I think this also touches on Rick's point of some people are buying tech just as, oh, that's really cool. I want to get that. Like that's the new shiny, bells and whistles out there. And then it literally gets to the project and it sits on the desk. And now you've just wasted $50,000 in time of everybody getting trained and onboarded. And I've seen this plenty of times. And I hate it. And I think Rick also mentioned, like, 1,000 cuts or death by 1,000 cuts for technology. And that's horrible to us, because then it puts a negative taste in those CMs or owners or architects' mouth of, nope, I've already tried that tech. I already tried one tech, but no, this one's completely different. Nope, I've already wasted money. Like that. Sometimes you only get one shot. And so when you are talking to them, because sometimes I will be talking with clients and we might not necessarily be the right fit for them. So you need to also, from the sales perspective or business development with the tech firms, don't sell them it because it's cool and you get another sale, or make sure that it's actually useful for them. Because that I think helps like a lot of other vendors and tech vendors that are looking to expand.
That's a critical point. That is absolutely a critical point. And I like this concept of death by 1,000 cuts. I'm going to put it in a little bit different framing. Construction is a series of processes, and each of those processes has places where efficiencies could be improved. And as a result, you've got experts in that one process saying, hey, I know how to make an application for that efficiency loss, and I can fix that problem. And then subsequently, you have hundreds of really bright people with great ideas fixing one problem or two problems in one process's workflow. But there isn't just one workflow for a construction site. There are multiple workflows. And as a result, we end up with this massive decision tree of where should we invest in our processes, what technology should we invest, what's going to be best to implement and easiest to implement. So looking from your clients' perspectives over the past several years, have you noticed any particular traits that you'd consider best practices in their adoption of new tech?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that also leads from a lot of the points as well as once you've said, yep, we understand our problem, we know the various types of tech that we need to explore, find out the problem, find out which vendors are actually out there that can solve for this issue. Just as anybody, getting their house painted or, getting, their car fixed, you don't just take the first quote and say like, that's it. Get three, do a side-by-side comparison, take them through the ringer. Don't just lunge in like, yep, I'm sold on this. Then once you figure out which one you want to go with or do a trial with, find a team that's willing. If you just, as Rick also mentioned, this can't be top to bottom implementation. You have to find the team that's willing to get their hands dirty, willing to carve out. Everybody's spread thin and incredibly tired on the job site, working endless hours. You throw a tech on their platform that they have zero interest or willingness to even explore, you just, again, wasted your time and money.
It's just more work to them and they don't have time to do more work, right? So
exactly. And so you don't want to, and that's also a big picture as well. You want to make sure that you're not adding to the daily burdens. You want to start to relieve and create more time for these, field teams. So find the right team and then, continue dragging that vendor through the ringer, have continuous check-ins, continue looking in the ROI and seeing how it's actually truly helping your daily process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a little add-on, if that's okay, Mark.
Yeah, please, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple dynamics that I like to point out, and some of the other more industrial industry groups that I'm a part of have kind of helped highlight and point out a few things. Is that sometimes the client or the market's commercial strategies, what they do is they're in a risk mitigation type mode, right? I want the best price with the least amount of risk, so lump sum or this or that. So they set up a very complicated commercial model for the GC. They set up a very complicated environment and commercial model for subcontractors to then be bolted on to some of these construction projects, whether they work for the GC as a sub or not. So one of the things the client that I spend a lot of time doing is trying to help them understand to create a good commercial environment. To me, lump sum, unit rate, T&M, whatever the model is, it's just math. We should be accountable to deliver product. What the clients can help us do is set some standards and expectations around process, and then enable all the providers on these construction projects to create that ecosystem to deliver the building, not to manage their contract. And
yeah, I think you raised some really important points there, Rick, and it reminds me of way back many years ago when I was just a young steel detailer working on drawings. This was back in the days when, no laughing, Jim, when we were working on the early days of AutoCAD, and that was a big shift moving to AutoCAD.
It was like 1912, right? 1912?
1917. But the big challenge that we had back then was data sharing was non-existent. The architects would be happy to send you a set of prints, but were really reticent to send electronic files. Same thing with the structural engineers, that would be happy to send you flat files, but a little bit reticent to send you anything that was electronic.
Exactly my point, Mark, exactly.
Because of error propagation, and that became a challenge. So in your experience, guys, do you still see that kind of data sharing being a challenge today, that each silo wants to maintain their own data and not share for the fear of error propagation or other reasons?
I do. Yeah, I still see
absolutely.
Everybody's shaking their head.
that. Especially for us in the industrial space, where I spend a lot of my time, right, is more sort of power plants and chemical plants and, oil facilities downstream and midstream type things. There's also that whole intellectual property piece around process. And so that's what they kind of hide behind. So we bring our clients right up to the edge with that and say, look, I can do this, 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 and this, but I can't do this, this, and this because one of your engineering guys thinks that I want to, backwards, reverse engineer his, lithium battery process or something, right? And so,
right.
But this is definitely an international problem. It's an industry problem. This industry doesn't like to share and collaborate in a certain depth.
For obvious reasons, right?
Yeah. And that's usually at times there's a lot of finger pointing on the projects, and that's what's nice about OpenSpace, is that it's just very simple. We're just showing you the status of the project and walking around virtually, which we've started to create far more of a collaborative between the design, CMGC, owner, and it allows for them. Of course, we do have the few cases where, no, this is my data, this is for my safekeeping. But for the majority of the part, because it's so simple and just easy to share, we've started to open up quite a few doors, even with our BIM viewer of side-by-side comparison for design perspectives. So I think you start to see that a lot more. But yeah, of course, definitely come across it.
Jim, were you going to add some thoughts there?
Yeah, it is getting better. It is, you go back 20 years and it was kind of dumb PDFs getting passed around, and then it was DWGs, and now it's models. And is it way slow? Is the technology much more capable than people are comfortable with, or the financial or legal structures kind of fully support? Yeah, the technology is kind of ahead of that curve, but it's absolutely happening. And this last year, I mean, COVID's a terrible thing, but man, it has really opened up people's eyes and the value of sharing electronically. Things have changed pretty dramatically. This last year kind of jumps us a decade in terms of the willingness of people to share data.
Yeah.
For
We're going to bring that up.
Reduce costs.
By force,
safety.
almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost by force, because people couldn't travel to job sites.
Yep.
Yeah, I wanted to actually call that topic out specifically because I think that the pandemic has had an interesting impact in so many ways on almost every industry. It's inescapable, but in particular in the construction industry, it's I think had a profound impact. Here in Boston, every job site was shut down for months. Construction firms were simply out of work. They had nothing they could do, and you can imagine in a marketplace like this, the biggest construction projects are all downtown. And it just had a huge impact, but it forced companies to explore, fortunately, new technologies and new ideas. What are some of the things that you guys have seen with respect to the impact of the pandemic on your specific elements of the industry? Jim, maybe you could start us with that one.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I tend to see all the big successes There is a lot of areas that construction projects were accelerated. You know, I remember the story, one of the construction companies, one of our customers was talking about how they had to turn a stadium that you would typically have a rodeo in into a hospital, basically, to deal with COVID cases. And, you know, and it needs to get done in 6 weeks, and it can't take longer because we're going to have people. Or, you know, in Europe, where it's like, we want to keep this project on track. We've been told by the city we cannot have more than 170 people on site at one time, full stop. So how can I use technology to do inspections and oversight and progress tracking and do all that remote? And yet the interesting part is a lot of the technology was there, but it hadn't been, the pressure wasn't there. And so a lot of pressure was added, and a lot of, I see a lot of partners, some of you, where you know, there's been a boost in the business. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. When COVID first happened, I thought our business would get negatively impacted because construction projects would come to a stop, and that didn't happen. A lot of these projects, they still need to get done. They're still needed. This will pass, right?
And it was
construction workers are necessary workers. They're not told you have to stay home.
In Texas, keeping those power plants operating definitely was a necessary person to be working, right? So that's where I'm sitting. So.
Yeah, it was very relevant for our technology. We went from just over 1 billion square feet captured to in January of 2020 to over 3 billion square feet captured by the end of 2020. Wow. We were able to minimize the amount of people, again, traveling to the job sites, whether it was a 30-day gut reno of a hospital to get more beds deployed. And, you know, the majority of the design owner team, hey, we can't come to the job site, but we also need to know what the status of the project is. Is it going to be done within, you know, the time to open up? And then just the various people that, you know, have developments overseas, or I'm not traveling, I'm not jumping on a plane. How can I do my coordination, or how do I even do my monthly recs without even understanding where does the project stand, what work is actually in place? So again, back to the collaboration type tools, and I'm sure from everybody here, but from the design perspective, you know, yeah, it accelerated a lot of these conversations. Yeah. Some it just came to a crashing halt, but some people that were not even exploring this technology before, it just went you know, 0 to 60. It just like, hey, we need it. We don't have time to talk about it, but I need to have visibility on my job.
Yeah, I have 2 points, Mark. Yeah, so one is the pandemic actually said, hey, BIM and 3D space and collaboration and all those things are even more critical. How can we communicate a construction solution virtually on a Teams meeting or a GoToMeeting environment? How do I do that? So all those things we discussed the first couple of questions, that prepared us to be able to take it, you know, to use that and then shift gears. I don't want to say it's all rosy. I think our business had, you know, some significant downturn from just volume. So that being said, I think our clients, several of our, you know, major clients had, you know, substantial headwinds. So even more critical for project performance and other items to hit the mark because it's a tough period in time right now, quite honestly. So it's really both sides of that sword, so to speak.
Jim, in preparing for our discussion today, you'd shared with me a point that I'd like to expound on here, and I'd like you to explore a bit with us. And I think it dovetails nicely into this particular discussion about the huge number of technologies and the fact that companies were faced with this dramatic change in environment with the pandemic. And you made the comment you made had to do with being agile and deploying, not just, you know, we talk about agile in software development, but you had sort of a different impact in mind, I think, when you shared that. How does agility apply in a case like the pandemic and the adoption of technology, and you know, share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. One thing about Agile, sometimes it can get misused. So not to misuse it, you know, there needs to be someone with that vision that knows where they want to take the company. What's that long-term goal? Digital transformation. So you need someone who kind of owns the long-term. Where do we want to go to build this competitive advantage and to build the business? But the way you get there, Agile, you know, for us as a software company, there's these, you know, 2-week sprints. But you see, I mean, Elon Musk and SpaceX, I mean, they're applying Agile. Let me try it. Let me see what works. I think everybody in the construction business should have teams who are piloting, who are trying a technology, who are, you know, those folks, and I think Rick mentioned some of this. You've got a group who's got like a passion to try new stuff. And they prove out, can I get value from this? Is it about increased safety, better decision-making, saving costs, better performance results, whatever that may be. And they prove that out. And then the real challenge is deciding, okay, we've proven this one out. You know, we did that Agile approach. Now we need to roll it out at scale across the company. And that's really where the challenge comes in. And I think it's the hard part for people who are probably listening in, who are kind of senior management. It's like, you know, that's where I need help. It becomes less of a what and a more of a how. Help me take advantage of what we've proven works.
Yeah, we're right in the middle of that right now, Jim. It's funny on our digital tools. So we've been out. You know, I'll say it again. The environment we operate in is typically a project environment, which says it has a finite start and a finite finish. Innovation and technology is really in front of that and enables those projects to be successful. So if we don't have that that experimenting and that, you know, the art of what could be stuff happening, you tend to become very internally focused, and you tend to become just playing the same game that you've always played. You have to figure out how to change gears and get above the fray, so to speak, and lever technology. So as Jim mentioned, you know, my team's sort of the skunk works team, right? We do 3D scanning, we do, you know, Revit expertise, we do digital tools and digitizing process and all those things. When you find one that really works, you have to bring it to scale to deliver the value for the you know, the board, so to speak, right? The senior management. They have to invest, they have to resource, and it has to happen. If not, you're limited by the number of smart guys or smart people you have. Smart ladies too, right? But smart people you may have in the business. So if you have 3 smart people, you can do 3 smart things. Somehow you have to bring that to scale, to Jim's point.
That's a really good point. And I think that's back to the point of one size doesn't fit all. I love seeing a successful, you know, portfolio deployment. They have all their projects using the technology. And I say, how do I replicate this? How do I bring this successful rollout? We did the trial, we did the, you know, couple projects, then we did full enterprise rollout. That's great. Now, how do I bring that to the next organization? It's almost impossible. And again, like you almost have to have a playbook for how your organization works. Who are going to be your problem childs that, like, you just know are going to be the ones pinging you or calling you and, hey, how do I do this? And again, if you don't have these processes in place, it could just be a nightmare. Again, like even during COVID, we do full rollout deployments, and then feel like the project teams are disheveled. You have to have like set standards for this. And whether you're small, medium, large size firm, you still need to be able to orchestrate this and have a full rollout plan before you even attempt to try to do this. Because again,
that's an important point, Phil.
Yeah.
These projects can get incredibly complicated and incredibly intricate. And you know, it sounds like we're narrowing down on you know, focus on the why, on the what, and on the how, and making sure that we have that well documented and know how to measure whether or not we're being successful at it. Joseph, I'm sorry, go ahead, Rick.
No, you keep, I interrupted. I apologize. Keep going, Mark.
Joseph, as a representative of the European market, you sort of have a unique perspective to share with us. I'm sure that many of the technology decisions and topics are the same in Europe, but it's noted that in some European geographies, the concept of BIM and the adoption of BIM strategies has kind of gone faster than in other parts of the world. And I know that you're particularly passionate about the idea of the advent or the increased availability of scanned building environments. And so I wanted to get your thoughts on what are some of the important technologies that are up and coming in Europe, and why do you think that the European geographies are so much more willing and or further ahead in terms of BIM adoption than some of the other geographies?
Well, thank you, Mark, for having me here on this panel. BIM is an definitely international topic. If you go to LinkedIn, there are more than 100,000 people who are BIM managers or have a BIM job title. Here in Europe, especially in Central Europe, we say in a positive way now that we are in a third wave of a BIM adoption. So it's now moving from should we, or from the topic do we really need that, to the topic how can we implement that. It was driven in the past because lots of construction projects, especially larger ones, were way out of their costs when before scheduled, and then the government also pushed that by making it mandatory for large government projects in the infrastructure. And COVID actually pushed that because of the lack of expertise on site. Experts weren't able to travel, and currently we see a strong push on digital twins, especially scan to BIM, not plan to BIM. We have the push now, scan to BIM, as built reality capturing way, so do it the other way. And so BIM, currently we get more and more BIM models here from the scanning process, and also smaller devices. And you look at Apple, the latest iPhone Pro has a LiDAR set in there. So we have democratization of scanning here. People are everybody has a scan device, a small scan device in his pocket in the near future. And we have this this process that high precision scanning is available now. So you can have qualities of a 1 centimeter accuracy. And in this combination, we have this pushed, let's work together on a scan to BIM model, sort of. So that's the current trend we see here in Europe. And lately we had events with 5,000 people attending, and just to grab the latest technology around that. And so we have sort of a positive third wave around BIM here.
Yeah, I love the laser scanning point cloud, scan to BIM stuff. As built is so powerful versus a flat drawing. The first project we did with point cloud work is we actually did some work in Ludwigshafen, right? Part of your country, Joseph.
Okay.
So
it's part of our country.
Yeah, so that was 6 years ago, and now we have a full team that does nothing but do as-built capture. Sometimes it's for dimensional control, more like your robotics need. Perfectly fits with our BIM strategy. We can bring in, all our products and all our tools and all our equipment and put it in that as-built condition. And if we want to model it, we can actually model it and start to share it. Those libraries become natural extensions right into the models. Very, very powerful. And in pandemic time, and just quite honestly, in a in this global economy, we're working with people in the Middle East or Asia or Canada, all over the United States as well. How can we do that effectively and show them it's super powerful? So,
yeah, I'm surprised. It's quite fascinating because the UK, Australia, France by 2022 are continuing to roll out these BIM mandates. And again, not just for government projects, and they've done an enormous amount of case studies, ROIs, to show tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars saved. And I think sometimes in the US, we think we are so far advanced in technology. You start taking a look in Japan and Europe, and it's almost like a different conversation that I'm having sometimes with some of these clients, and their process for rolling out or implementing, just because simply it's just enforced by government. And I think, will we get to BIM mandates in the US? I don't know. I know they've tried it in California on in LA on some government school projects, and they saw a tremendous amount of savings. Why they didn't try to replicate that in other areas, it's beyond me, but I think you will start to see that where, and again, pandemic helped, and I think we definitely took a large step forward. Will we go to the point of mandates? I don't know, but I think there's been positive responses in other areas like the UK, Germany, Paris, or France, and even Australia as well. So it's interesting to see that.
It's an alignment issue, really. What this business is aligning a bunch of different stakeholders. Everyone's trying to manage their agenda, and sometimes that's a contract model, sometimes that's their turf. Sometimes our clients are thinking how to mitigate cost, and they're still thinking from 1970s, quite honestly. And to their point, sometimes we're really poor at delivering projects. So one of my focuses internally here at BrandSafway is the term project delivery. How do we actually deliver a project? And delivering a project isn't sending as many people out to hit a punch list as we can. It's about being way in front of this project, understanding all these dynamics we're talking about. How are we going to plan? How are we going to handle unplanned? How are we going to collaborate? How are we going to do transactions and systems? How are we going to do status updates? Those are the things that we're focused on.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Jim, I want to come back to you. I've got another question. I mean, you've been with Autodesk for a couple of years now, and you've seen just a ton of technology changes. No one can argue the leadership position that Autodesk holds in the industry with respect to just this massive array of software technologies. But lately, you've been engaged in a very interesting project that has, in some ways, given an opportunity to unify some of the technology and some of the aspects, that being the Forge project. I want to get your insights on how Forge might fit into the technology landscape for construction companies. And then after that, I'm going to ask everybody to make their sort of one last takeaway statement, and then we'll turn to questions from the audience.
So Mark, I personally have been at Autodesk 32 years now. And my dad was a mechanical contractor. I was a tin knocker and a steam fitter way back in another time. But we've watched these waves, right? 15 years ago, there was this BIM thing. What is this BIM thing? I don't know what this BIM thing is. 10 years ago, it was like, I can get drawings done faster if I use BIM. But there's this I thing in BIM, right? And then, 5, 6 years ago, it was like, well, using the cloud for collaboration. I don't know if I trust this cloud stuff. Maybe, maybe not. Now today, we're all kind of taking it for granted. There's a third wave coming, which is frankly built on the back of both BIM and cloud, which is about data. And we've heard a little bit about that today. But a lot of what we do, scheduling, pricing, costing, tracking, it's data. It's not about a model. The model is kind of context. The model is a way to capture data. It's a way to view data, but it's actually about the data. And we are heading to a place where it'll be easy to get the data you want in real time. And we can talk scary stuff like, I really don't want files, because files mean versioning. There's no such thing as a file for an ERP system or a CRM system. Files are a necessary evil, dare I say, yet most of us get paid for delivering files right now. But it's coming. You can see this one coming. Like BIM 15 years ago, like cloud 5, 6, 7 years ago, this data side is coming. And it's probably a 10-year experience. This is not going to happen quickly.
Yeah, the cool thing about the 3D is it got everyone's attention and we focused on the issue. Now that we have that, now everyone's saying, I need the data to make this picture complete, right? And so not only that, everyone's out trying to do a 4th and 97 touchdown pass on IoT, right? So imagine if you have a comprehensive BIM environment, that digital twin that Joseph mentioned, right? Those are big deals to me too. Now you have the data that Jim mentioned. Now we say, how can I do value add services? How can I run more efficiently? I can start to really do meaningful IoT, connect all that into a model and have real-time data from sensors in the field in a virtual environment. That is the holy grail.
Yeah, so Mark, Forge is about, it's plumbing. It's helping people connect data, grab data, move data. For most customers, they don't need to know anything about it. It's a technologist tool. It's a set of web service APIs. But some of you have had to deal with it because you need to build your apps based on some of this plumbing. And for us, it's about making it easy. Web standards, making it kind of straightforward for someone to work with design and construction data.
Data standards also.
Kind of voodoo binary stuff.
Yeah, data standards also, right, Jim? So
Absolutely.
One of the problems then is, brand A likes this data this way, brand B likes data this way. How do I make that data agnostic and have a standard for it? That's where the UK and Europe have done a better job. That's why they're farther ahead, quite honestly.
Yeah, though I will warn people, it's not about file standards, it's about data access standards. Because, data comes in all kinds of places. Somebody's using, I don't know, Primavera P6 or some costing system or some different ERP system.
Right.
We need to make it very easy to connect data so you can make better decisions.
Yep. It's how do I pull all these attributes together from 4 different engineering environments and talk about it agnostically. That's really what I'm referring to, right? And a sensor can bolt up to it.
And that is happening. It's going to happen. And for most of the people here, Phil looks pretty young. He'll probably see the end of it. The rest of us, it's kind of the rest of our life's work.
I'll be out taking pictures somewhere when that happens, and I'll send you a congratulations, Phil.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, don't worry. I'll take it on for you guys. Yeah.
Good to have a champion. All right, guys. Well, this has been fantastic. I've really enjoyed the conversation and can't thank you guys enough. I'd like, before we transition to audience questions, I'd like to ask each of you to share one piece of advice to our listeners as they consider technology and how to implement that technology and share your wisdom, share your most important piece of wisdom. So why don't we start with you? I'll just go around the screen as I see you guys.
Sure. Keep it simple, honestly. I see it every single call with clients, leads, new people I'm speaking to. The moment construction technology gets a little bit too technical or complex, it's gonna fall wayside. And it ends up being a waste of time and money, and you're gonna have a lot of frustrated people on the job site. Keep it simple, and then once you pick a simple technology, like figure out your process or know your process before you do roll that out, and keep that process simple as well. Because again, on the path of least resistance, And the easiest way to do that is, yeah, just keep it easy for each stakeholder on the project, and most importantly within your team too.
Great
So,
advice.
no, thanks again, Mark, for this.
Thank you. Rick?
Yeah, so I'll look at it sort of as the digital transformation roadmap, right? So understand why I'm in business and what I'm trying to accomplish with my customer and my market. Understand what your business does today and what it could do. What are those gaps? Start with the data, like Jim said. So don't go out and build a cool AR tool without a way to really track how it's been used or how effective it was, as an example. And then the last piece is, how do I operationalize all this technology in our business, right? So I'm talking purely from my business as, 30,000 people in the field. How can I operationalize this technology, digitizing processes, collaborating on data, those type things. Don't just build it for the sake of building it. Make it meaningful and make it matter to the market and the customer.
Awesome. Excellent advice. Mike, how about you?
Well, I can't add anything different other than, yeah, I agree. Keep it simple. We help with the data. That's our main goal and focus is the data, and we're trying to help our users understand the data more specifically at any given time they need along the building process. It's been a challenge. Yeah. I've seen a lot of firms here lately that have did not have access to the cloud, right? And all of a sudden they're caught off guard. You need to keep looking ahead and don't be too scared to implement something. Yeah.
That's a big statement right there, for sure. Joseph.
Well, I would like to add the trend is your friend, sort of, the technology trend. Use those trends. If people are used to smartphones or scanning or barcode reading, QR code reading, implement that in the workflow, because then I'm back to Phil and Rick. Then people think it's simple to implement. And so that is the one angle, and the other angle is use this for solving a real problem. So digitization is not by its own. It has to be useful for something on top of that. So in the combination, trend is your friend, and solving real problems, one can move on. And I'm quite optimistic that it will be faster in the future.
I like that. I very much like that, Joseph.
And Jim, how about you?
Have a big, aggressive vision for your company and for you personally, your career, and go at it in an agile way, delivering value to your company, value to your stakeholders, and growing your skill set and your capabilities and your reputation personally as you do it.
Yep.
Excellent.
It's got to be rewarding, right? Yep. Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah. Why do it otherwise? Well, again, I can't thank you, gentlemen, enough. This has been a very interesting and insightful conversation. I appreciate your thoughts and your time. We do have some questions from the audience, and so starting with the first question, is IFC still relevant in BIM? Is the industry providing tools and services for BIM customers going to settle on a unified standard format, which is simple to work with by anyone? Something as simple as JSON data file, for example. Who wants to field that one?
Yeah, let me jump in. IFC, it's funny, I was actually in a room where IFC was first envisioned in like 1992. So it's 29 years old at this point. It's a way station on a path, because kind of static defined data formats, data structures, long term, they don't work. It's really about APIs and interfaces to ask for the data you want. And when you have standard interfaces, you can grab the data you want, because it's not about the format, it's the data I want to go do something with: cost, schedule, plan, analyze, kind of whatever. Now, look, let's be clear. IC is a huge part of processes in large numbers of design and construction companies. It's delivering great value. But it's a way station on a path that we're taking longer term.
Yep. I have a little feedback on that one too, if it's okay, Mark.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I think IFCs will stay for a lot of people for a while, but what'll happen, to Jim's point, is they'll basically evolve. And what'll evolve is, how do clients release scope to us, and how do we do that more, nimbly or agile, as he mentioned, right? It's going to become a different animal. We're going to start seeing packages, systems, process released. Oh, this is not ready, or that is ready. And so those dynamics will start to change, right? And I think for control and for milestones and those type things, there has to be some mechanism. And so today, without something else, that's what we'll use, right? How do I know what's in my queue to go execute? I think that's pretty valid, actually.
So kind of summing that up, it's like Mike was saying, it's all about the data. Get to that information. Another question directed for Jim. How important is the workflow between Autodesk Revit and Autodesk Field during the pandemic?
Huge. I'll tell you, our Revit and our BIM 360 business, now rebranding Autodesk Construction Cloud, has been a bit of a rocket ship because of the pandemic. A lot of customers who had done pilots or kind of modest implementations, and then realized, we can't meet in rooms anymore. We can't send half the people to the construction site. So they did full scale. We're giving everybody BIM 360. It was pretty, it's been a pretty, I feel guilty because, it's been a hard year for a lot of people. But if you're in the collaboration technology business, it's been a pretty good year.
It has, from that perspective, certainly. Mike, we have a question for you. Okay. How important is having a plugin such as Overture, which guarantees the correct work in the distance with the expertise of Allegion specs?
I'm not following that one. So we work really hard to make certain that we're pulling all the specifications at the time, and it's online for everyone to collaborate on. And the plugin itself, there's only one avenue it can go through, one means of data transfer that can happen, and it's consistent.
I think that's exactly the point, Michael. I think that the question has to do with the consistency and the validity of that data and the pipe between Overture and that data repository, the specs for the Allegion products. Mm-hmm. So you're saying that can only go through one door, so to speak.
That's right. There's only one avenue it can travel, and it's a one point A to point B. That's all it can do. Yeah. Now the data accuracy on the back end is where all the collaboration happens. So that's once that's in place, it's a very easy transfer.
Sure, cool. Another question says, "Hi, Simon from the UK here. I can confirm that COVID has accelerated remote collaboration and has advanced tech adoption, and that we are indeed seeing millions in savings through increased productivity. As a company that takes responsibility for integration of complex projects, I'd be interested to hear about the level of BIM maturity in the US. Do investors and contractors fully realize the benefits of BIM yet?" We've touched on that a little bit, but if any of you have some additional thoughts you'd like to share, I'd love to hear them.
I think just with how mature and sophisticated a lot of these CMs, GCs, and even on the owner perspective, companies are becoming. They're not relying on a third party or just the design team to hold onto the responsibilities and workflow of this, and then expect everybody else to, hey, you guys have never done BIM or 3D models or Revit, like what's wrong with you? Like we're about to put up a 50-story tower. But now people are large. I mean, I have a client developer in Boston that wants to, they're getting far more involved. They have a hotel project, and now they're starting to hire people internally to be able to be more familiar, be able to be more tech savvy from the design and 3D perspective. So it's not just so foreign. So every time they do have a OAC meeting to go over design, it's not just like, okay, I'll take your word for it. Like the model's good and everything's looking okay. So seeing tremendous progress in that perspective. Again, I think we are still behind Europe and other areas in the world, but definitely taking large steps forward. As you can see how much funds and resources are being devoted to these VDC innovation teams.
Right.
When you see these large companies like the Turners, the Skanskas, the Walshes, just hiring, hey, VDC manager, like you see it all the time. So they're devoting to actual departments focused on this, and you're seeing that more widely, even on smaller, mid-market companies as well. So it's definitely in the past 5 years, because 10 years ago at Turner, the only thing we used BIM for was just the MEP coordination. Just like high fluorescent colors of piping and conduit and ductwork, and that was it. And so where we've come in the past 10 years or even 5 years, yeah, large step forward.
Yeah.
So the government mandates that we've seen in Europe, coupled with those concepts here in the United States, and the need to be agile, flexible, and virtual throughout the pandemic really has driven kind of a new wave of BIM adoption. Rick, you want to add to that?
Yeah, so to those two comments, I would say that it's really sort of the big players in each space that are starting to see the value and driving it to their clients as differentiators. What happens is the market follows, right? And on top of all of that, I think there are some regulatory groups like at the state and even county levels that are starting to see it. And then you're seeing industry organizations who are starting to dictate certain things around at least channels of construction in their market, right? Whether it be schools or whether it be something else, right? That the Europeans have influenced us. On the industrial side, we sort of have industrial BIM, which is like advanced work packaging. I think a lot of people think it's all about the software. It's really not. It's about, to Jim's point, it's about the data and the standardization of some of that data, regardless of which system we do things in. So it's happening. It's just a little slower. We're a little more freewheeling here, right? So it's coming though. I see it.
Cool. Thank you. Jim, another one for you. Autodesk Forge and Autodesk Assemble seem to have similar functionality, and a bit confusing which one is the focus of Autodesk for BIM. Can you elaborate?
Sure. For those who are not familiar, Assemble is a company that Autodesk acquired, maybe it's 2 years ago now. And they're very much about quantification, making it easy to integrate with ERP, cost estimating, kind of things of that sort. Assemble used Forge. BIM 360 is built on top of Forge. So you really need to look at Forge's, again, it's plumbing to help you connect data to different processes. So it's not either or, it's a and. Because I don't know, we have hundreds of partners, customers who've used Forge to do their own kind of counting, scheduling, costing, integrations.
Visualizations.
Yeah, there's not one answer. There's lots of answers.
I say it's our conduit, as you said. It's plumbing. It's
That's infrastructure for a lot of those collaborative software environments.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is trying to allow people to get at data without, again, having to deal with a binary file and kind of binary voodoo kind of stuff.
Yep.
Okay, so the last question we have from our audience is, how do you effectively work with software developers to optimize and customize your tools for interoperability?
I'll tell you how I do it, or how our team does it. We basically include the development team into the business process side. We want them to understand the business flow, the transactions, all of those pieces, because a developer in a closet in a remote office without visibility to who he's trying to help and what the overarching business process is and what's on top of that as a strategy is a recipe for rework after very limited use case piece of software. So agile, scrums, all those things is what we want.
I was going to say, I would add a page from what Jim was saying earlier. The agile methodology works quite nicely. I know that in some of the collaborative efforts that we've had with BrandSafway, that weekly series of meetings, those stand-ups, the sprints and the goals really help the developers understand the core,
yep.
Yeah, the core function and the use case. And in some cases, we're in the position of being able to share a little bit more insight about how other applications perform, or some considerations that you guys might want to consider as you're developing and including new technologies into your products.
Yeah, it's that connecting of a subject matter expert who understands the business problem and isn't a technologist, because you want to focus on the business problem you're trying to solve, teamed up with a good developer. And the beauty these days is if you get a good web developer with a subject matter expert who really understands the problem, things can happen pretty fast.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, I meet with our Scrum team every day, and if I don't have everything figured out, they're gonna blow past where I want it to be, and it's going. I gotta hold them back. But yeah, if you map out your problem statement and everything and get that nailed down, it works beautifully. It really does.
Cool, great insights. We have actually had a couple more questions come in. One thing which is difficult for managers is implementing these new technologies on a project or a company, as people are mostly reluctant to change in their everyday work schedule. So what measures can we take for implementing these technologies? I guess the question is really, how do we help the constituents that we're working with overcome their reticence to adopting new technology? I think, Phil, one of the things that you said earlier is really central to this concept, and that is explain why.
Yeah, why and education. I think understanding, again, back to the core of what problems are we looking to solve, and not just buying the new shiny cool tool, but really understanding your organization and firm and understanding what problems you have at hand. Are you consistently seeing change orders arise? Are you consistently seeing delays with even daily construction reports being filled out or submitted? Or how can you start to automate and streamline these types of processes? Is your safety reporting struggling? Is your historical records to hand over to the client just an absolute mess with your as-built and everything? What types of coordination burdens or issues are you continuously having? So even something as simple as that, and trying to find technology to actually, because then it gets people excited. Yes, I don't want to be here on Saturday or Sunday. That's enough of an incentive for some people to implement technology that prevents some of these problems or issues or mitigate some of the risk on site. And some companies even incentivize teams to try out the new technology. But again, you still have to have that willingness and people open to the thought of even just testing out the technology. And that's why you do have to be selective with your teams. You will typically find at least one young person in your organization that's wanting to speak up. So you also have to create an environment that's allowing for people to speak up. A lot of these larger firms are very we don't want to hear your opinions or new ideas. Open up that dialogue. allow for people to explore this, because I think some people are scared, and I think like the new generations that are coming up, they don't even bother mentioning, hey, like, do you want to check out this new technology that can help us? A lot of the times it's just, you know, swept under the rug and people don't want to hear it. So I think you also have to create an environment where it's like, no, we're open to new ideas, ways of doing things. And I think that's a big step forward, and it's pretty general, but honestly, like, there's a lot of organizations out there that don't like change at all. It's still that kind of archaic mentality that, no, like, it's not broke, let's not fix it.
You're absolutely right. One of the things that we've seen from the custom solution development side of things is that there is a willingness to explore new technology. There is a willingness and a desire at different levels in organizations to realize those benefits. But there's also a fear. There's a fear of the disruption. There's a fear of the safety of implementing and adopting new technology. And so we try to help our clients with that safe and efficient implementation of new technologies. And it's important to convey to the stakeholders that it can be done safely. It's not going to disrupt your entire process. It can be done in a way where you're extracting the important information early and have, you know, a lot of these solutions that are marketed today are, you know, let's say partial. They don't completely integrate into the systems and workflows, and so that creates a disruption as well. And that's something that we try to focus on with our clients to help them overcome that safety concern and that fear.
People running projects are mitigating their risk. If your technology project is viewed as a risk, they're mitigating you. And so what we try to do is we try to make sure that we can illustrate an entire process that we're trying to accomplish with this technology. And then we physically make them do with us and walk through those things, hands-on training wherever we can, virtual training when we can. And we illustrate to that. And then there's follow-up, because sometimes they're not going to admit, oh, I didn't know what to do here, so I just guessed and did that. Right. We have to actually provide a little oversight. So we're the training wheels for round one, and we have to have a process that actually accomplishes something. To Mark's point is, so a lot of tools you see on the internet is, oh, it'll do change orders. Well, I have to do change orders, and I have to do time, I have to do this, I have to do that. You're going to die a death of, you know, a million applications on your cell phone or on your PC trying to manage one single thing. That's one of the things we're chasing. But once you can illustrate a round trip process, and you can hold their hand and help them with training wheels through that process, and then you actually recognize them for how effective it was, then you get synergistic. People really buy in. So, or you find out you need to go back to the drawing board.
Fair. That's a fair point. And it's important that, you know, it's essential, I think, to keep that in mind, that as you're rolling out new technologies, being agile also means being able to recognize when it's time to shift tracks or shift gears. And that's not always easy to do. Once you've made that investment, then you've started down a path. But recognizing early on that it's the wrong path is an important factor. We've got two more questions. The first is, much time was spent talking on the importance of data sharing and access to data. Yet some companies in the tech space still refuse to participate in this way for the good of the end user / industry. Do you have any suggestions for how we can begin more formal open sharing and access of data versus trying to protect IP as we did decades ago? So I'll start this answer by saying that one of the ways that we've AMC Bridge has worked with our clients to resolve this data silo issue. I mean, that's ultimately what we're talking about. This group of people has that data and control, and the next group of people has their data and control. And one of the things that we've been able to do is help bridge those different silos while still maintaining the integrity of the silo for the owner of the silo, because it's important to them. They don't want to lose control of their data, but the other folks need to have access to it. And so there are a number of dashboards, for instance, or data mining applications that can be created that go after exactly the information needed and share that with the people who need it in real time and be more efficient. What say you? Anybody want to add anything to that?
I feel the pain, but I know all the technology companies, if they don't make their data readily accessible through industry standard interfaces, they're dead. And they've got maybe 5 years to get this sorted.
Yeah.
And we know in our industry, Jim, that we've been chasing that year after year after year.
Yeah.
Somebody has a proprietary format, it gets cracked.
Those days are over.
Yeah.
So
Maybe I can add something here from the technology side. Look more at the cloud technology and how cloud data management works. You still you have a process who has access and who can change data and who just can view data, and it's one single source of truth. And once you have implemented such an environment, you're still in control of your data, and it's easy to share, and you get away from the file management, which is still very common in this industry, and move more towards cloud collaboration. Then it's much more easier for everybody.
Yeah, like
that should be.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's a lot like what Jim was saying earlier about it's not about the file format. It's got to be about the information.
Yeah, it should be that should be mentioned or questioned in your first conversation with the tech vendor, with the technology vendor.
Yeah, so
have that as a checkbox.
Yeah, I would also say that I continue to tell our teams internally, upstairs and downstairs, that in 5 years or 10 years, at worst, 5 years, most likely, is the people who can bring the process of managing the business and run that as a consistent day in, day out process. All of the other stuff is just tasks and activities within that process. So if you're not thinking about how to make your workflows and your business comprehensive and being very agile and being able to bolt up to someone else's enterprise construction management stuff, you will die a slow death and then a very quick one in about 5 years. So it's not about how many people you have or how many successful past projects you've had or how much gear you have or equipment you have. It's about how you're going to manage the process, collaborate in that ecosystem, and deliver the project. That's it.
Right. Okay, so the last question, team, is you mentioned during the seminar that tech adoption is happening more and more, but that the industry is still slow to adopt new tech. When it comes to technology that qualifies as a capital investment, what is the industry using as key factors to qualify an investment in these types of technologies? And what are factors that would hinder industry adoption? It's an interesting question.
Well, a couple things. I'll tell you, a lot of the companies have, let's just say, companies and clients have already started some of their journey, and I would tell you that half of them or more are probably going a little bit down the wrong path. It becomes very agenda driven sometimes, and you have to get the right spirit so that you can recognize that you're sort of off track, and you might have to kind of recalibrate yourself on your strategy. I think sometimes we get locked in. This is what we decided. This is how we're going to do it, and we're committed to it, even if it's completely wrong. Those are some of the things I do see, and sometimes projects or clients have a big enough stick that they can dictate that for a while, and you have to raise your hand and speak up, right? So.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of these larger industries or companies or firms do have business analysts that's their sole job, is to figure out ROIs as you're piloting and rolling out new technologies, and how much, like, literally kind of time management, like an assembly line of what actual ROI components are we getting. I think that's where a lot of companies are actually just putting in a budget now annually for technology adoption. minimizing that risk, just understanding like this is for tech. But again, measuring that ROI can be incredibly tricky. And I think Rick definitely makes a good point that sometimes you're working against yourself because you're trying to figure out how much of like an initial monetary savings are you getting. No, just have the project run smoothly. And sometimes it's like the what ifs, like, well, what if we save one change order or we save a week? Usually if you're going every single month or week to try to understand that, sometimes, yeah, you're in the wrong place. And before you know it, you realize like you haven't used the tech effectively or the right way that it was supposed to. Sometimes wait until the end of the project, then go back with a fine comb and try to analyze that.
Right.
So again, like you don't have to be, top ENR 100 with the business analysts of, this is what we have to do. You have to test it out, and I think it's different for every firm again.
Some project governance, a project governance model around the innovation and tech stuff is important. The problem then is it becomes all about the project and not about the innovation. And so one thing I really liked about Autodesk and a few others, right, whether it's AT&T or HP even, is that they had this foundry that sits in front of this project governance model that allows all of these things to kind of happen and percolate and validate some of those ROI models. And, if not every project's out trying to invent a sensor. Well, we already have sensors. We already know how to do that from the foundry. This is now fast track. Guess what? Now my ROI is better. Now I can be very agile. I can do all those things. So It's a very strategic approach to technology is what's required. We have to crawl, then walk, then run. I get it, but don't do it without a project governance model. But don't just do project governance. You have to have a innovation foundry as well, in my opinion.
I think that's one of the most exciting things that I've seen develop over the past 5 or 10 years, especially in the construction industry. There are now people who hold the title of innovation expert or efficiency expert. Folks that are looking at technologies, helping drive the adoption, helping evaluate where technology should be applied and what we should expect for ROIs. So clearly, I think after an hour and a half here, I think we can all agree that it's a pretty exciting time for the construction industry. There's a lot of option. There's a lot of new technology, and that still can be daunting and nerve-wracking for folks in the industry to adopt that technology and make use of it. But I think I can't thank you enough for the time you spent today and the insights you've shared. I think it's been really very informative and
good questions from the audience, by the way. Yeah,
great questions.
It's been fantastic. So I can't thank you enough. I wish you all the best. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon, and may the rest of 2021 be healthy and super successful for all of you. Thanks for joining us, everyone who joined in on the call, and wish you all the best. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good job, to our friends in the US. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Joseph.
Thank you to our moderator, Mark Driscoll, all of our panelists, our sponsor, AMC Bridge, and everyone who's joined us in the audience today. Our next webinar will take place later this afternoon at 3:30 p.m. with a discussion looking at leveraging 360 photo capture technology to boost existing processes. You can sign up to join this session and our other AIACS approved webinars via our website at newyorkfestivalofconstruction.com. We hope to see you online shortly. Thank you all once again and stay safe.
Thank you, Abigail.